Hello everybody, time for another quick sit down and chat, and this one is really a genuine question from me. I know the title may look like I'm going to be doing some sort of expose or dig or something like that, but instead this is coming from pure unadulterated frustration. And my question really is as simple as it sounds. What on earth are Maserati smoking? What are they doing? What are they thinking? What's going on? Now, what am I talking about? Well, as you can probably guess, the MC20. This is, without a shadow of a doubt, the most important car to come from Maserati in a very long time. Since they kind of went over from Ferrari ownership into being semi-independent and now part of the Stellantis empire, their model range hasn't really been spectacular. Nobody seems to like the new Quattroporte as much as the old one. The Ghibli, dealers I've spoken to didn't really love the Ghibli either because it suffered with that classic Maserati reliability. And the Levante, well, there's one lady who lives somewhere near me that does have one, and that is more or less the only one I've seen on the road all year. I drove a Levante for a little bit. I had one for a couple of weeks, courtesy of Meridian Modena, and it was a nice car, but also one that I would very much struggle to actively recommend to anybody who hadn't already convinced themselves that they had to have a Maserati. And the simple truth is, beyond that nice badge on the front, there aren't all that many reasons to try and recommend them to somebody, particularly not for the money. However, the MC20 is a very different proposition. Here we have an all-new car in an all-new category. Maserati haven't really ever made a supercar. Yes, I know people will mention the MC12, but to me, really, that was not a Maserati and not really a supercar. That was a race car that they had to do some road-going versions of, and we all know full well underneath there is a Ferrari Enzo. This is a totally different kettle of fish. All new Maserati specific chassis, bodywork, interior and engine. For the first time in a long time, they're making their own engine all by themselves without the help of their previous taskmasters at Modena, Ferrari. This car is also being built back in Modena, whereas many of the other cars in the lineup are not. So the Quattroporte and the Ghibli are built in Turin. Whereas my generation Quattroporte and the Gran Turismo that was spun off from it were both built in Modena. And to me, I think that does really make a difference. You can also feel that the two cars were very different. The MC20, though, does seem to really do all the things you would want it to. And for people who don't want a hybridized supercar, it does offer a very good alternative, I think, to the likes of the Honda NSX, not that anybody bought one of those, the incoming Ferrari 296, the McLaren Artura, and inevitably whatever Lamborghini do with the Huracan that you can't actually order anymore. It's also priced to compete more with, say, the McLaren than the Ferrari, because it's actually about 50 grand cheaper or so, I think, than the Ferrari 296, and the options on the Maserati are gonna be a lot cheaper. I wasn't entirely taken by it when the pictures were first released because it did look to me to be very generic and the noises the engine made were lackluster at best. However, pictures don't really do a car that much justice, especially not when it's that early on in production. To give you an example, the Ferrari 296, not really a car I was that taken by when they released the pictures. However, when I saw one in the flesh at Silverstone, oh my word, stunning, easily one of the most pretty cars that company has made in a very long time. That takes them back really to the glory days of the 360 and stuff like that, where their styling was genuinely much more elegant. I know there are people out there who disagree, but I think the 296 is quite a looker, and time will tell whether it's a real design classic or not. However, with the Maserati, I've yet to see one in the flesh, but this is not really what's got me confused. You see, here's how manufacturers usually release a car. The exact time frames and order will differ from make to make, but generally it's always the same. We'll hear rumours that they're going to be building something, then we'll maybe see some sketches, perhaps even some spy shots at one point. Then the manufacturer these days will start putting out their own official teasers. You know, here's a little bit of a light, here's a gear lever, or here's the dials, or something like that. In Maserati's case, they did a lot of talk about the new Nettuno engine, all that sort of stuff. And then you'll have the launch, the release. Ta-da, we've unveiled it, here's our brand new car. Not too long after, maybe a few months, you'll get first drives, impressions, that sort of stuff. Sometimes with manufacturers, that can even come before the actual official launch with the car still all in camo, but that'll happen. Then just before deliveries start to happen, you'll get the journalists actually driving the car. So to give you an example, Ferrari Roma, I drove that middle of last year, and then the cars were being delivered to customers kind of end of last year, beginning of this year, and it has been a strange time for these things, so timescales have been all over the shop, but that's kind of how it happens. And then, of course, your customers start getting in their cars, and it's in the wild. But with the MC20, that doesn't really seem to have happened. It was all doing the normal thing, previews, sneaky bits, talking about the engine, all that stuff. Then the great big unveil, da-da, here it is, our wonder car. And then nothing. And this is where it gets really quite confusing. Now, I can understand there will be many reasons for a pause between the reveal and the launch or the press launch of the car. We've got so many things happening over the last year. Take your pick, from COVID to production chip shortages to all sorts of stuff. You know, it's a brand new car, you might have developmental issues. There are loads of genuine reasons why launching the car might have taken a little bit longer than planned. The McLaren Artura, for example, is suffering from exactly that. However, the difference between those two cars is that the Artura, nobody really outside the factory has actually driven one, because I don't think they're ready yet. The MC20, though, is being delivered. And yet if you were to go on YouTube right now and search Maserati MC20 review, you're really going to struggle. To give you some idea, I'm filming this on Christmas Eve, so maybe by the time this video comes out, I'll be completely wrong and everything will have changed. And I really hope that that's the case. But the weird thing is, they just don't seem to have given this car to anybody with a camera. And it's not like the car hasn't been reviewed, because some of the traditional magazines, Autocar and the like, have actually driven the car. They have tried it. And what kind of initially worried me was, well, if the car's out and the car's already being delivered and customs have already got them because I'm seeing them in different places, you know, they've already been to Topaz or whatever, you know, that sort of stuff. Well, if customers are getting these cars and nobody's really been handed one for a review, is this the equivalent of, in the movie world, when a film is not screened for critics? And this is code word for the film is rubbish and we know, because not screening it for critics simply hides for as long as you can the fact the film is utterly tragic. But anyone who knows anything will know that if a film was not screened for critics, that means it's an utter and total turkey. However, the MC20 doesn't seem to be. The MC20 has gotten decent reviews. I've looked quickly. I haven't read the reviews because I don't like to read reviews of cars I hope I'll get a chance of. But the car's got 8 out of 10, 4 out of 5. It's not a disaster. Those are reasonable, respectable scores, especially considering Maserati's very limited experience in this field. But you go on YouTube now. So if I were now, I've got my YouTube up here, and I shall type into it, Maserati MC20 review. And what do we get first? Well, we get a video from Novitec. Yeah, that Novitec, the tuning and exhaust people. And then after that, you've got carsales.com.au, and then some Australian lady I've never heard of. And then you've got Mr. JWW. Now, here's the crazy thing. He was basically their brand ambassador. He was there to introduce the car to the world. So if any YouTuber had access to this car, it should be him. Yet even he hasn't had access to it. And I don't mind a pause or an order or them wanting to take their time to get this car out there, but here's the simple fact. This car is so important, you've got to be getting it out there right now. You've got to be creating a buzz, a demand. You've got to be telling everybody, if this car's actually good, you want every single person you can get your hands on shouting it from the rooftops. Because let's not beat about the bush here, Maserati right now is in real trouble. Here in the UK, all I see are the combined Maserati-Ferrari dealerships closing down the Maserati side. I have not seen a new Maserati building ever. In fact, I no longer even know where my local Maserati sales is. We've got a few service departments left, but they all used to be attached to Maserati showrooms, and now they're not. They're either Porsche, Ferrari, Lamborghini, Bentley, or whatever, because nobody seemed to be able to shift a Maserati, and then when they did, usually the thing came back like a boomerang about 2 weeks later. It just isn't very good for Maserati right now, so they need to do everything they can to improve their public image. Maserati PR in the UK is a very, very small entity. They have limited resources, and I'm fairly sure if they had an MC20 to be dishing out, they'd be doing it right now. I don't have a formal relationship with Maserati UK, even though they're in the same building as Ferrari. The two are separate companies, so there's nothing I can really do to try and twist one arm to get the other to give me something. But the fact is, I don't think they've got the cars to give out, so that's kind of a moot point. You've then got other people like Seb Delaney, who again's done a bit of a walk around, a tour and a drive, but there isn't really much out there telling you what the car's genuinely like. And I just don't get that. I really, really don't get that. It in fact reminds me of the way that Sony used to operate. I used to use Sony cameras all the time in my previous life, and they made the best cameras in the entire world, but they thought that that was enough. They thought that having a great product was enough. And the fact is, it isn't. Even in the really highly technical world of film production, you still need a marketing department, because just making the best camera isn't enough. It's just not. So, yeah, I do not understand what's going on with Maserati. If somebody out there has ordered one, or they're thinking about ordering one, or maybe you've even got one now, or you're talking to a dealer about it or something, I would just love to know, like, what's going on? How have you found the process? Are they doing things right, wrong? I actually had a gentleman invite me to go out with him to Italy as part of this Maserati launch, and he actually said I could drive the car and film, but the problem was that was just a private individual offering it, and it's a big no-no to go and film a review of a car when you've not been invited there as media. So I didn't want to do that. And yeah, I don't know what they're doing. I really, really don't know what they're doing. If this thing's as great as they say it is, they should be getting it out there, but they're just not. And this is Maserati's potential, a real, true revival of the brand. And it's almost like they've given up. Or do they just not trust new media? Which, for a car of this kind, if you want it to survive, you're going to have to be getting it out to YouTubers. I'm very confused, so hopefully somebody out there can maybe explain this a little bit to me, because right now, I don't understand it. Anyway, thank you very much for listening to another one of my little rants. Hope you're having a good time. I shall speak to you all soon. Bye-bye.